Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to this program tonight. This is really exciting. My name is Joanna Kerr, and I'm the Executive Director at the North Andover Historical Society. Welcome to the solar-powered Worden Theatre at this Net Zero Stevens Center Museum and headquarters of the Historical Society. Tonight's program is the fourth in our series focusing on historic preservation, and James Worden is our speaker. The historic 1818 Bailey Loring House on Academy Road was taken along the path to sustainable stewardship by James and Anita Worden several years ago, and tonight you will find out more about this labor of love for James and Anita and learn how you can apply a vision of sustainable stewardship to your own historic house. James D. Worden is an entrepreneur and business leader. Many of you already know him. He's a board director at the Historical Society. And he has 35 years of experience in photovoltaic systems, electric vehicles, and net zero energy systems. He's a graduate of MIT. He and his late wife, Anita, were the recipients of the 2017 Lifetime Preservation Award from the North Andover Historical Society. You may have noticed that there's a lot happening in this building in the Historical Society headquarters. If you haven't already done so, please check out our newest exhibit commemorating the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution in the History Wing. Next Friday evening, June the 13th, join us for the launch of this new documentary series, Farm Legacy. This last program in the Historic Preservation series in the theatre. This is a long-awaited documentary series, more than a decade in the making, featuring interviews with North Andover farmers and farming families. Friday's program starts with a light reception and ends with a panel discussion featuring local farmers Michael Smolak and Ann Stork, among others. Please check out our website for more information. Finally, just a couple of housekeeping notes. Please make sure your cell phones are on silent. Please refrain from eating and drinking anything other than water in the theatre. The bathrooms are through the boardroom behind you on the right. And then in case of an emergency, there are two emergency exits, the one that you came in and then one here to your right. I'm going to welcome James Worden now.
Thank you, Joanna. So my head has to fit out of here when we leave, so that was very nice. This was the funny story. Well, first funny story is 45 minutes, Joanna. Ha ha ha. Anyway, you guys tell me if time's going too long and I need to wrap up. But once you wind me up, you can't really shut me down. So anyway, the story of the house was very funny. Anita and I got married in 1995. We'd been living at my parents' house for about 5 years as we started our first company. And while driving to St. Mike's for church every week, we one day saw a sign pop up in front of that exact house. The sign was actually right about where this camera position is out on the street. And it was a for sale sign by a real estate broker I'd never heard of. It's something kind of small. So we wrote the number down just for fun. It's like, hey, let's get mom and dad and go look at this house. It might be really fun. There's no way we would be thinking about buying it, what it would cost and how big it was and all that. But we called up the broker, and the lady that answered the phone immediately said, "Oh, you wouldn't be interested in that house. Like, your number's on a sign that says house for sale. The first thing I say is I'm interested in you for coming. You wouldn't be interested." That's an interesting sales pitch. Well, it worked. Because I said, why? And she said, well, it has all these weird restrictions. It's been on the market 3 years. The price has dropped 3 times. Developers don't want it because we can't, but no one's interested in it. So I'd love to set up to see it. So literally that next Saturday, a week later, I went up with my mom and dad and Anita, and we totally fell in love with it. Me, especially with the barn, her with the house, and just the overall scene of it. And then we found out the price. And again, this is 1997, about $430,000. And so we were paying for a $229,000 house down at the mosquito bitten end of town to the Sharpner's Pond Road in a pork chop development there in a 1994 cookie cutter colonial. Was fine. We were perfectly happy. Right in front of us, someone built a horse farm right in the spring before we left, and wow, if the window's going the wrong way. So it was a marriage made in heaven, and as I'll show a later slide about when we arrived there, it came with a tenant, Bob Stevens' daughter, and she ended up paying the $900 a month was exactly the difference in the mortgage between that house and this house. We got this house for the same price as the $229,000 house, and we end up going through 3 single moms with 1 or 2 kids, 3 sets of them, each about 3 years before my parents-in-law moved in and took place of them, and then we could afford to not have that apartment set up. Anyway, that's the story of buying the house. So we now start. So wanted to dedicate it to my beautiful wife. Still miss her, and wish she was enjoying it all. Still with us now, but we, as Joanna said, we put the house back together again, like putting Humpty Dumpty back together again, together with all these energy efficient additives to it. So Joanna found for us a definition of sustainable stewardship, and really what it is in this case is we're combining historical stewardship with energy, environment, and sustainable stewardship. And I like to think of it together as fiduciary stewardship or saving money. And the problem with energy efficiency is often it saves money in the long term, not the short term. So, this is a very simplified thing. What I see as sustainability is really all these things. And you can see social kind of, to me, as, the future for people, but also, as I think I said later, the maintaining this historic and diversity of all these different types of buildings, as opposed to if you are just going after environmental or cost stewardship, you might just knock these things down and build something efficient and modern. But it's kind of neat that the Venn diagram showing how the different pieces cross together. But I really see in the middle there, sustainable is when you bring all these together. That's, to me, real sustainable is when you don't want to just do one, but do them all for the benefit that they give. I love this quote from Thomas Edison. It's just so right. He said this about 110 years ago. And you notice oil, gas, natural gas, gasoline, none of those were even mentioned because they weren't really being used yet. I mean, cars were just beginning. But coal and wood, we're burning all those up. And, do we use these renewable forms? They weren't very efficient yet. But he was very far ahead of his time. As greedy as the Fords and Edisons of their time were, they were the Elon Musks of that time. This is kind of neat that he said this before anyone ever knew that was going to become the truth. So this is another interesting area that you can't forget about. There's embodied cost or embodied energy versus operational energy. So if you make a building more efficient or a car or anything, and you have to, there's the amount of money and energy you have to spend to make that or make that benefit, and then there's the amount it might save over the long term. So where things like granite countertops are nothing but fun, they're just wasteful everywhere. But yes, we have them in our house too. But they're so nice, but they just cost money. They last forever. But in terms of energy and efficiency stewardship, embodied energy versus operational energy, if you have to put something in that costs more money and takes more energy to make, say a solar cell, an electric vehicle, a heat pump, a geothermal heat pump especially, the payback is longer. The embodied energy might be a little bit more than a gas furnace, but it doesn't use fuel for the rest of its life. Let's say, furnaces used to last 100 years, then they used to last 30, now they last about 15. But they're cheap, you put them in, they burn stuff, they're done. But the kind of systems that I like are ones that you do it once and it's almost forever. If you fix a house properly once, whether it's water issues or the right kind of wood, the right deep kind of treatment to everything, just the fabric of the house, it'll last for 50 or 75 or 100 years. This house is already more than 200 years old. 1818 is 207 years. We were supposed to have a 200-year birthday party, but things were getting crazy. The pandemic happened or something, right? Not 1818. I don't know what happened. But anyway, that's the concept of embodied energy. And some of the problems I wrote down here, some of the reasons people don't do some energy efficient and sustainable practices and good repair of historic houses the right way is that they don't know. A typical contractor that comes doesn't know about, if I add some more insulation, it'll cost you this much and save you this much. They just know what the standards are. They know what the code says, and they put that in. If you go to energy efficient code, like Energy Star, then that's a good thing. If you use Energy Star appliances, that's a good thing. I like to go further, because any amount you save, you spend on saving energy, as long as it's going to pay for itself within 12 years, to me, I would do it. 10 years for sure. 8 years, I already did it, before even thinking. But a lot of people are thinking like 3 or 4 years. They don't want to think longer term. But money in the stock market, if it averages, I think 7%, then it's like a 10-year efficiency. So I think that's about the number. Again, it depends on interest rates and all that. And I'm not a finance guy. But I always figure, saving anything you save on energy efficiency or long-term maintenance is going to pay for itself over and over again. And that's, like the way these houses were built, Victorian houses, whatever, they're just built so heavily and so well. The only thing that damages them is when people don't maintain. It might be 100 years old and some little thing isn't being maintained and water's getting into a crack and it's destroying stuff behind that and then behind that, and no one knows, and they just keep on going. But the materials from back then, the woods are so much more dense, everything is so much better quality. Even our house, which wasn't built to the level, it wasn't quite to the modern standards of like a Victorian house that's really, really, the engineering was so much better. This is kind of like an overgrown farmhouse, so everything is just bigger, the ceilings are higher, it's post and beam, but it's still, the woods were old, slow growth, they're not sustainable forests of today where everything is fast growth and grow, chop. So anyway, that's part of, you want to keep these old houses. There's a lot of carbon already embodied there, and you don't want to knock it all down and then build something new. And I said a lot about those things there. Like, it's more profitable to build something new. An architect can put his sexy new designs out, you get your open plan, your kitchen, walk into your living room, dining room, whatever you want. You can't do that with a house like this, especially with historic New England restrictions that are on our house. So, as my wife and I used to say, we used to joke about it, well, we can't wake up one Saturday morning and say, honey, let's blow out that wall. But instead we have to say, honey, let's go do this, do something else to beautify the place or add to it. So you don't have these big construction projects to change it. It's more about, enhancing it and making it better. So enough of that, right? So that was just my summary. So tiny bit on the history. Wow, he's big. So the sixth pastor of, pretty good looking guy, sixth pastor of the North Parish Church. This is a little bit, I looked up on him, but the house was started in 1818, and I heard it was finished in 1819. It was bought by the Stevens from the Loring family, as I've been told, in about 1950, solely for the purpose of protecting the landscape there, because there were no other methods of protecting things. And luckily they did, because Bob Stevens sold it to us in 1997, and he put all these restrictions on it. And part of the reason the cost came down, it was originally $850,000, and in 3 increments over 3 years it came down. And who knows what Bob was going through at the time, seeing all these drops. But they realized they could donate all the land around it, 11 acres, to the trustees of reservation, TTOR, trustees of reservation, and cut out 4 acres for our house, just 4 acres. And then he could do that as a donation and then pay for the restrictions and still make almost as much money as if he sold it for $800,000, because of the value of that land around it is extreme. So he was very smart, and we love it because now we have, I say we, but there's this protected land around us. It's kind of like we own it, but we don't. We look out the window and it's 1,000 feet to the property line and 2,000 feet to the next house. It's ridiculous. And you can't see any houses pretty much. You see Wire Hill, you see, I think it's the Blue Hills off over past the high school. You're looking that way, I'm not sure. Someone said it's the Blue Hills. So anyway, on we go. So this is all I have for history. It's not very much. These 3 pictures came from the Brad Wakeman collection, which used to be the R.D.S. Stevens collection that Brad curates in the Stevens house, Nathaniel Stevens house. And you can see the old car there and the little wood pile. It's kind of cute. These look a little more crisp on the originals, but I just sort of blew up the key parts of it. But the house looks, incredibly similar with this funny central gutters because everything was dipping in the middle. We changed all that, took those out, put corner gutters, and put the gutters on with a smiley face going that way. So if you look at the house from the street or any side, you'll see that the roof line's a little bit smiley face this way, and the gutter's like a frowny face, and it's extreme, and it's still water sits in it. It's bare. The gutter looks like it's going like that, but the gutter's basically level. And that was a way we could get this to work. But this was just so awful having these pipes running right over the clabbers. Now we have a square gutter running right on the corner board, and I think we put it around the side so you don't even see it. So anyway, and in the back, this thing isn't even there. No, these are all the house. So this is the front street. This is from our turnaround driveway is here. The barn's here in this picture. So this is a picture kind of standing next to the barn, looking at the back of the house, straight back, Wire Hill. And then this is looking from maybe the back corner of the Kittredge property. So you come around here like this. And those are the 2 garage doors. This garage door is that garage door. And this funny little thing, it looks like maybe a little kind of a 3-season greenhouse or something, that's not there anymore. This is still there. And we were told that was the outhouse when the outhouse came into house. So that there was an outhouse somewhere, then the outhouse was added on. And we never told mom-in-law this, and she's not here, but that's the Pedamal room now. That's the prayer room, the Hindu prayer room. It's kind of weird that that's in the outhouse, because literally just a few inches under where the Hindu stuff is, all the poop went down there. But that poop has long since become good. It's probably unbelievably good dirt.
When you bought the house, did it still have the garage doors?
Not those ones. No, looking at that car, I estimated this was 1940. So, could have been 50 because that could have been an older car. But those are funny looking doors. They look like kind of like going into like a nondescript bar or something with a little window. But those were replaced with really cheap masonite panel wood doors, probably 1980. A lot of work was done in the 80s. Cheap Delta sinks for mica counters, peach, brown cabinets. I think we even have an avocado toilet somewhere. But yeah, just funny stuff. But I'll show some of the pictures of what it looked when we came and then how it looked after we were done. And the funny thing is, of all the parts that Historic New England doesn't control, and we didn't know this when I spent like 3 hours carefully wording all the stuff we wanted to do. They came back with 7 words. We don't control that wall. You can do anything you want. It was like, oh. I guess I could have read the Bible, but the Bible that came with our house is this thick. It is a Bible, and it has about half its photos and half of its written paragraphs about every single restriction and how they work. Like, what aspects are restricted. Some things aren't restricted. Some things are. But really fun thing is, they didn't say anything about the basement except the beams. So I had a lot of fun underground. And actually, this is being recorded, so I can't say everything. I carefully picked pictures so I wouldn't incriminate anyone here between myself, my wife, contractors. But no, all kidding aside, trustees of the reservation also controls our property as well as the 11 acres. They control our property. 2 different places besides Old Center Historic District Commission, who of course we love. But those other 2 private organizations control us. And how would trustees of reservation control us? Well, what they control is we can't dig down or dig up. We can't permanently change the landscape more than 1 foot. We can't add or remove a tree without checking with them. So it's like, wow. So that was all built into the whole thing.
Why is that?
It's how Bob wanted to keep the vista and the look and the feel, because people remember trustees themselves put those washing mountains in, they're really fun. I don't have a problem with them, but it did change the look of it. Those, you guys know what I mean? Those There's two of them, and they put flowers and circles and stuff on them. They're really cool. But I forget what they're called, like a landform or something like this. But they don't want, Bob Stevens didn't want, he thought, for his family's legacy. He didn't, that's why they bought it, to protect it. That means keeping it the same. The old-fashioned term for conservative, remember? Conservative, it used to mean that. Now it means destroy and burn everything, but we won't go there. I do think of myself as conservative, but not anywhere like this conservative. So anyway, some quick things here. Why is it important, the sustainability of these buildings? First of all, to maintain the diversity of all these different types of buildings through history. Maybe we can get rid of some from the 80s and 70s, but no, that's not nice to say, right? Because those are part of the history too. Long-term best economy, and then long-term, best environmental sustainability. And then, modern comforts and technologies can absolutely be integrated into these old houses. It's not like they can't be. And people don't realize that. They think that, you're going to be miserable in an old house. It's always going to be work. You can't make it modern. I think our house is really modern. I mean, we have sound bars and LED lights and star projectors and a movie theater in the basement with 4K. I mean, we have, geothermal heat is all automatic heat and air conditioning, can be controlled by the phone. So, just the fabric, because just the outside of the house is old. There's no reason you can't do those things. And it can be just as comfortable. It's all about insulation of windows. I'm purposely not going to get all dirty and talk about R values and percentages and all that kind of stuff. We can always talk about that stuff later. There's other people that are very expert in that stuff too. My only point with all that stuff is don't just take what a contractor says. Do some research of your own. Ask some deeper energy experts. Think about it yourself, and then ask your contractor. Then you'll be an educated consumer. You'd like to get different options on insulation, including, for example, these R values, and then that contractor will sit up straight and say, this person knows what they're talking about, or they've done some research. I have to do some research, because they just want to throw you what's normal, what they normally do, which is throw some bats of fiberglass in. Nowadays they are doing some spray foam, but there's a few things that you really have to do, especially with the house you want to protect and preserve forever, which is you can't just go in and put spray foam in willy-nilly and not think about it. You have to make sure water is never going to get in the house, which you want to make sure anyway. It's like you should do that anyway. So that's like full ice and water shield over the whole roof, making sure the barn boards or the sheathing is in good shape and completely covered with, I would say, modern Tyvek, Typar building papers that are lapped properly and wrapped around everything properly. Those breathe, but they don't let water through, but they also breathe if water does get through, because only then should you go and put spray foam on the inside of your sheathing boards and roof sheathing boards. Otherwise, if water ever does get in, it'll turn your wood to sawdust over time, and it'll just rot and be horrible between shingles or siding and that insulation, because the insulation doesn't breathe at all. It's a complete airlock, which is what makes it so wonderful. Fiberglass breathes. So we had a mix of technologies in the house. It still has a mix. I'm not going to say this house is wicked efficient. This building is wicked efficient, other than too many lattes, but those are good too. This building is completely surrounded every square inch with closed cell spray foam, all done inside against the concrete. This has concrete blocks. So in our house, mainly because historic New England has preservation restrictions that don't allow us to use spray foam, they don't allow things that are non-reversible. So, which is interesting. You can put anything up in front of something, you can cover something, but you have to be able to undo it without unsticking something from the original wood. They want the original patina of the wood, even inside a wall, to be how it was. So you're preserving the way the house was crafted, literally the tools that were used, which is kind of going overboard. But we accepted that. That's the Bible we signed up to, the religion we were set up into. So we had to go by what it said. Plus, it just happens to turn out that the walls are this thick. on the 2 wood walls, and the brick walls, there's 3 layers of brick with air in between the bricks. So the R value you can get is actually pretty good with blown in and laid in fiberglass, even though it breathes air with good building wrap, which Kathy found out, Kathy Stevens on our house, that it really made a big difference to improve our house, just that building paper and the new windows. She did on 83 Academy Road right across the street. So we did, we did a combination of different things in different parts. So that slide where you saw the antique pictures of the house from 1940-ish, that part of the house, the end cap especially, and that north wall, they didn't care what we did there. So there, we took off, someone had put drywall over old plaster. We took that off. We took it all off. We took the lathing off. And behind there, it was only 3.5 inches thick. So the back of the house was made very cheaply and very poorly compared to the front, which was very heavy. And it was nice that they didn't care what we did there, because of course we wanted to do spray foam there, and we had access to both sides. Steve put new building paper, replaced the clapboards, and we put spray foam, filled it right up to the brim. We even added some strip of wood to get more in, and then we put new drywall, and we plastered it all to make it look not like drywall, so it has a plaster look. But anyway, so that's the back of the house. So we got to do the back of the house with triple glass windows, all like a modern house, and the front of the house is all done with other methods to play along properly with historic New England, and recognizing and being in sync with those old historic pieces, like the beautiful windows that are part of the house. Unfortunately, on top of beautiful windows, you have to put ugly storm windows, which is not very nice, but don't really have a choice on that. So anyway, these are just some resources that, although the federal government with the present administration is kind of killing most of the rebates and tax incentives, but Energy Star seems to be surviving so far. That just helps you pick your efficient appliances, and there are insulation recommendations and Energy Star homes. Obviously, National Grid and Mass Save, we're all paying, every single ratepayer. Well, I don't pay, but every normal ratepayer that doesn't have solar, that kills their bill completely, you pay about, was it 0.5% or 1%? I don't remember. We can look on the bill, but of your bill goes to renewable energy, and another 0.5 or 1% goes to conservation, which is things like insulation. And that pays all of us, anyone who wants it, to get solar or insulation and sealing and heat pumps and all that. So that money is your money that comes back to you or whoever wants it. If you don't ask for it, you don't get it. It just goes to everyone else. And as the rates keep going up, you keep paying more and more. And so you take that money. When they used to give away LED light bulbs, Mass Save used to come in and give you a case of LED light bulbs. That was sent from that program too. So anyway, when we arrived at the house, I said some of these things before, that let us pay so that we were paying the same for the other house. And we were 8 years into this very all-consuming EV startup, so we weren't really doing anything with the house. And then 2 years later, the kiddos started to come. Oh boy. So that became another distraction from the house. So we had a, believe it or not, gas over steam heating system. So about the worst heating system you can have. That was probably put in around 1900, running on coal, and then it moved to oil, then it moved to natural gas. And only we changed it, completely took it out. The rear of the house had a furnace making hot air, a gas hot air furnace. So the last system when we came was gas, so it went from coal, oil, gas. We had some of the original coal, and we burned some of it, and we kept some of it, and we actually put some in the archive here, so we can use it for the energy exhibit, have some coal people can touch, the good old stuff from the past. So there we go. Standard electrical, insulation was pretty poor, and trim and clapboards were pretty deteriorated. I'll show a few images of those. And the basement, believe it or not, I brought a humidity meter down that was 90%. I was wondering, it feels really damp down here. Someone had put insulation up kind of sort of on the bottom of the overhead, kind of between the joists, and with little metal wires. And it was literally, when you put your hand on it, there were water droplets all on the bottom of the insulation. It's like, oh boy. So I knew that was a big problem. So as something else that I wanted to say, that when people come into an old house, or any house, but especially an old house, it's always good to me, and my dad told me this too, to live in the house a while, to just go through at least all the seasons, maybe once, maybe even twice, before you just start going and doing things. Because something you see that you don't think is right or you want to improve, you don't know what it's like in all the seasons, or how it acts, or how comfortable or not it is. And if you wait and kind of get into the groove with it, you don't want to get complacent or get used to it and not do it. You know, to me, you write it down. I don't like this. This seems to need help, whatever. And then you come back to it. But then what you've seen in your subconscious and everything else, you have time to work on it, think about it, ask other people, and then start an action plan and doing things. So we kind of did that, and we liked that. And we didn't have time anyway because there was a lot going on. So, and the yard was a complete mess. So that changed. It had the original, I forget the guy's name, the original landscape designer that also did some landscape designs in some famous places. Is Hornbeck? Is that someone Hornbeck or something? Something like that. So we heard, and we actually met the guy when he was, I think, like 80 years old. And he I don't know if he came to the property or we saw him, but he told us some really neat things I'll never forget. Like, never put chemicals on your lawn, never fertilize it, do lime once every 2 to 3 years, don't have to water it, cut the grass a little bit long, like all these like simple things. And I've just followed those forever and it works. I've never put a drop of water on my lawn, never put any chemicals on it. And it, it's worked fine. Yeah, it browns out, and if we ever have 6 weeks of no rain, it browns out, but it comes right back. So anyway, so steps to improve. So again, over time, while we weren't crazy busy, we had, first stabilize any immediate deterioration, things that are problems. You see cracking plaster, or if there's any water anywhere in the house, oh boy, you got to address that. So we did things like that as quickly as we could. One thing was going around the barn and just putting over every window, putting a storm panel, which is just a sheet of glass with a frame to protect the window pockets and the deteriorating windows from any more damage. Water was going in the barn, and that did a great job. And then gradually we went around later with our carpenter, and we replaced pretty much all the window boxes, most of the window boxes in the barn. And by that I mean these boards and the window sill and the window sash itself. The barn has just single sashes that you can take out if you want to have air. So things like stabilization, the house was priority, but the barn was in sad shape too. So we did a little bit of that also in this project. First thing we did was, like, there were some holes in the roof and some of the dormers to stabilize it, stop any immediate damage from happening. And then living on the property for a while to kind of see how things do and then develop our plans. And then the big goal is deep energy retrofit, which was hard to do in that house because we had to come at it carefully in different places, get permissions on certain things, and then we had finances to consider, what we were going to do when. We did a lot ourselves, and then mass save. We did mass save, I think, 3 different times. We had them come in. Mainly you can do it every 3 years, at least that's what it used to be. And every 3 years we just add more insulation in the attic, whatever maximum they'd let us do. So the attic was great because we could play there, we could add, so we couldn't spray foam up above, but we could put more and more and more insulation, especially around the edges of hip roofs. You can't really do it. You can't use storage space in the little part of the hip at the side. So kind of this 5 or 6 feet all the way around. Then you have a middle part that's still really big, so you can put stuff in, like 30 by 30 feet. So we filled that. It probably has 18 inches of insulation. So it's like that's like R70. So you take what you can get. Some things are really inefficient, but that's really efficient. So we don't have any heat going up. Another really neat thing we did that no contractor would ever do, we had to really convince the HVAC contractor. We didn't run any ductwork in the attic because people like to run ductwork up in the attic and then to bring it down into the second floor rooms. Well, it makes sense, right? Because in the basement, you run the ducts under the first floor and you go up into all the first floors. But how do you get to the second floor? You can't go in between the first and second floor. I don't know why new houses aren't built that way. It doesn't make any sense because they get to start from scratch. But when you go in an old house, you definitely don't have a choice to go in. But yes, you do. We had I had this crazy idea of don't go up in the attic with some huge air duct or 2 water lines or 2 Freon lines, have another unit up there thundering away with a blower, distribute it down and come down into all your rooms. Instead, we just made little chases, sneak them in little places, going from the basement to the first floor. Don't go up the attic, just right up to the floor of the first floor. And the first thing we did was bathrooms. So it just turned out that in the vestibule, the little separate vestibule that goes out to our driveway on the south side, and then the kitchen and pantry area, it was a really easy place to sneak these little encased in wood air ducts in that come immediately up from the basement right into the bathrooms. So you get your nice hot, 75, 80 degree air coming in the winter right in the bathroom where you need it most, and then it distributes through the bedrooms, comes to a central location to get taken back down. But it takes a little thought and care. It took a lot of thinking to find out where all these places are and where it goes through the floor. Most contractors don't want to do that. They want to blow a hole, bring everything into the attic, do all their work up in the attic and bring everything down. But now you have all these ducts bringing all your hot air through a cold space or all your cold air conditioned air through a hot space. Doesn't make any sense. But contractors, typically don't care. And if you ever noticed, ducts are usually insulated with about that much insulation. It's usually just fiberglass, like an inch or 2 thick. Yet walls have tons of insulation. But why would something that's the hottest air be insulated so little when it's up in your attic? None of it makes any sense. So if you were going to put it in your attic, put a foot of insulation on it. Bury those ducts. Then it maybe wouldn't be too bad. Anyway, that's a bit nerdy and crazy, but we don't run any ducts up there. So again, we had to get clearance from Historic New England, clearance from Old Center Historic District Commission, not much of that. And then, we improved the beauty and then adding a fun factor, which, Stan and I are talking about trains and stuff. Yeah, there's actually trains. So first step, water management. So we went really deep with water management. The place had sump pumps originally. The barn didn't have one. The basement just would have a foot of water in it sometimes. It would just gradually dry out. I guess cows used to slop around down there. I guess the cows didn't care. Maybe they drink the water too. But the house had a little tiny sump well with a crummy little sump pump that would turn away. And it was running about half the time. So I knew there was a big problem. So we went really nuts with it. And I didn't find my pictures of the basement project where we dug down. So I can only talk about it. I know I have them somewhere. But we literally dug down 2 feet so we could increase the head clearance by a foot and then have a gravel layer with drainage pipes and then a nice thick concrete slab. We went 4-inch thick concrete slab, the barn and the house. And the house has a huge sump well, but we don't use it at all because when we did the tunnel project, which I'll talk about later, we daylight drained the whole property. So what daylight drain means is if you were down at the level of the drain in the house and you looked out through the pipe, you could see daylight somewhere. So literally the pipe runs somewhere, I can't say where, but the pipe runs somewhere where it literally goes out to daylight. It actually goes into gravel areas, but it's essentially, it runs downhill and it's all by gravity. So there's no sump pump, there's no gray energy being used to lift water up that shouldn't be coming in the first place. And another thing we did to keep the water from coming in, besides lots of foundation work that I'll show in a few minutes, we dug trenches down to the depth of the foundation bottom and put perf pipes with silt socks in a gravel 2x2 foot gravel bar, I guess you could call it, and then put landscape cloth over that and put all the soil back in. And so basically it's a water sucker. And we have to do it far enough out from the foundation, about 8 to 10 feet, so that we don't have the building collapse. Because if these are just loose field stones. So if you dug next to the foundation to build, you could have a big problem. So because when they laid the foundations, they usually dug a little bit of an angle and they kind of stacked the stones up. They're using that angle to help their work, it's a little lazier. And this is undisturbed glacial till. So, in this North Andover, it's like a rock. It's super, super hardy. So it's hard to get through, but also makes a nice foundation base. So anyway, this is when we did a tunnel project. We added this to this side of the barn. We added all the way around the house, all the way around the back of the house. And now this is actually, these pipes are picking up the downspouts, and there's a 3-pipe system. All the downspouts go in one pipe, then the basements drain out in another pipe, and the 3rd pipe is for these water-sucking things outside. So if any one of them gets screwed up, it doesn't screw up the other one. So this, again, a bit extreme, but water management, so important to keep the basements really healthy. And it took some years to figure this out, seeing what worked and what didn't, but now I know exactly what I'd do if I came to a house like this in the future, if the basements were wet. But now the basements are dry as a bone. There's dehumidifiers, but they barely run. And yeah, you can put cardboard down there, paper, humidity is like 50%. That's a good level to have. So this is getting deep now. This is Mr. Stephen Martin, and truly a miracle worker. You know, there's that old saying, jack of all trades, master of none. He's jack of all trades and master of all of them. He's unbelievable, but that's him. One of his guys helped him. When we did the big work in the basement, barn and things, both the sons were working for him, but then he had just individual guys. But if you look at what's going on here, he put these things he dug out way down, and he put these things in called coffer blocks that are like, he called them coffer blocks. You put a little form and you put concrete, but after you dug out, as we used to call them together, the butt cracks or the huge field stones, you go down deep under those, all the way down and under them, and put some forms in, and then he just used foam, and he put concrete and packed it in there, so you're kind of locking the 2 stones where they can move, so they can't move. Then you dig out everything and fill the rest of it in with concrete, and then it's looking like, I don't know if that picture shows it. Yeah, that's when it's all poured. So first see, this is all loose. Those are like field stones. And then, he's putting these coffer blocks in that look like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then digging it all out and pouring it all in. He's like walking over boards here because that's deep and before you put all the dirt back. But this project, this is like a month and a half, of work, digging stuff out, being very careful not to have the house fall apart. But we went, there's a better picture. I didn't remember I had this. Those are what he called the coffer blocks. And then there's the final poured whole situation. This is the north wall of the house that's not seen much. One of the brick walls facing the Kittredge farm. This is looking from the inside. So we work from the inside and the outside. So that's, I don't think Bailey Loring I don't know what he would have said when he saw a laser like this, but that was getting our level line, because as we took the basement level down, we needed a line always to measure down from. You could put a stick anywhere out in the field and see where the lasers and see how deep it was, because we needed to get it all pitched right and get it to the right depth. So, Steve figured all those things out. This is a picture I found of some of the work we did bringing in modern materials, the foam there to insulate the ground. There's, wire mesh, really doing the poured concrete floors really well. This is, an electrical line. I think that we just put that in just in case we needed a line there. So anyway, and here's the concrete truck coming. That's Steve talking to the concrete, the tunnel and forms guy. So and then the concrete truck arrives and they're pouring the whole floor. This happens to be under the back of the house facing the barn. So that picture I showed before. So, and again, subsurface drainage under every floor, everywhere with a vapor barrier. So it's like, it's all locked in. So it's built like a really well-built modern house in the old house. So this is really crazy. We saw that these wooden tops were bowed down and deteriorated looking, and some of them weren't like ready to fall apart, others were, so Steve would repair some of them. Mostly they were okay, but they were just kind of sad looking, and you knew that it wasn't right. And we noticed that on the south side of the house where it's presented to people, it had granite toppers over the windows and the doors, but on the north side they got cheap and they just put a piece of wood across and laid the bricks right on top of it, which means there's nothing kind of bearing that load of the whole wall other than the piece of wood going across, which is pretty scary. So we went and asked Benia, Historic New England, for permission to copy with a rough-looking granite like the other side. And we got these from Swenson's Granite, custom made to size. All these guys and the basement windows. We didn't do the top floor because for some reason under the overhang, those weren't deteriorated at all. So like, why bother them? No one can really see that they look different. And it makes it look really nice because you have the granite there, then you have the big wood heavy windowsill down there. So it really made things that felt so good to make this right. And no one can ever see this because it's on the north side of the house. It faces, the Kittredge Field. But that shows the kind of, dedication that Steve had and we had as the homeowner to just do it right for the next 200 years. Because those things were not going to last. I mean, yes, if they're cleaned and painted, kept well sealed, they should do okay, but they're still being deteriorated by all that masonry material that can get damp, it can condense water, and rain's going down here all the time. So we got the permission. We were very surprised. Historic New England was like, yeah, that makes sense. The builder was just cheap. You're building up the standard. If the builder in 1818 had spent a little more money and done it the same as the other side. So I was surprised and happy that they let us do that. One of the wins. They didn't say yes to everything that we asked them. So as I call this, repairing high and low and going deep. So Steve is a guy who, someone might say, you give a warranty for like 3 years or 10 years or 5 years or maybe even a generation if you're a really, really good contractor. Steve says, my guarantee is 6 generations. And people are like, huh? Because he knows how things were built in 1900 or 1800, and if you build it right, it's going to last. So here we dug in, and we're seeing quite a bit of deterioration on a post and a beam. But that thing's 200 years old at this time. So it's really not too bad. And it would have been better looking than that if it hadn't had water coming in at this point. So what Steve would do with something like this is he'd shave it down till he got to good wood, maybe cutting off as much as 1.5 inches out of 10, and then he would sister on a brand new either spruce or pressure treated wood. Historic New England doesn't like pressure treated, but Steve and I do. Because you put a piece of pressure treated wood against that and you lag it in there really nice and put polyurethane glue, which Historic New England also doesn't like, then you're really sealing it all and protecting that old historic stuff from where the water could get to it in the future. But then with all the right wrappings outside, the water won't get in there in theory. Now, who knows if Typar and Tyvek papers are going to last that much longer than tar paper did, but they're supposed to. They haven't been around as long as tar paper. But you hope they're better, and they also breathe a lot better. So here's some other foundation work, and as I say, going deep, we sistered in pressure treated against the ground or masonry to hold up the old work. And Steve just kept working on it, jack things up, and again, this is going around all the buildings, like literally the shed, the barn, and the house in the opposite order of that, because the priorities, obviously. But this is a whole corner was completely deteriorated. That's the garage doors, the masonite ones that Stan was asking about. This is that same wall, but you're only seeing part of it. This whole thing, corner board, was rotted out. The sheathing was not bad. I mean, that's all original 200-year-old sheathing. Big wide boards, like 18-inch wide boards for sheathing. Like, it's almost as good as plywood, covering your house with plywood as far as how much you cover. And then, of course, Steve will put this Typar paper. This is all new here. Whole wall. This one he completely replaced. It was quite rotted. And then you can see all the infrastructure here, electrical pipes, watering pipes. With Anita's garden work, we ran water to everywhere just for the flower gardens. And we actually never use it, but when the ground was all ripped up, I ran lines to everything. So there it is. There's that scary looking wall. Electrical conduits run right over the side of the house. Cable TV strung through the gutters and stapled down the house. I mean, everything like this thing was just falling apart. Masonite door. We survived with it for like 5 years, and we just didn't use the garage because you open the door and a panel would fall out. So we just kept our cars outside. It wasn't worth it. This is what it looks like today. So it has the carriage house look doors. So these open like a regular garage door, but they look like they open like two separate doors. And what an improvement over that. And we actually deleted that window because historic New England didn't care. So we made these windows bigger and spread them apart a little bit to make it look a little better, and just kind of brought everything together. Brand new corner board, everything is new here, put some coach lamps there. So that back of the house is like a new house in a sense. Every single board is replaced. But we kept all this original style, this plinth blocks, which is, kind of unique and fun. You can't quite see them, but it's right there. It's just out of the picture. That wasn't purposely edited out. It's really there. You can come back and see it anytime if you want to. Just walk up the driveway. Historic New England won't have any bone to pick. So, and then this is really fun. We buried a triple glass Harvey. I don't think they make them anymore. The same windows that are in this building. There's 44 windows in this building. Our house has, I think, 36, but we only have 11 of these. So that's a triple glass vinyl window sliding up and down that's hidden behind an old looking New England trim that's made of wood. And we use a wood called P5 or Lifetime. Steve using all these corner boards and trims. We don't use the AZEK board because we're not allowed to. But the AZEK board is really good, I guess, but we can't use it, so I can't talk about it. So P5 or Lifetime is a pressure-treated, more stable, dimensional architectural wood, unlike pressure-treated regular wood, which can cup and split. It's not as good. Like we used it for railroad ties and stuff, and foundation pieces, but not for fancy trim. So this is, you can see it doesn't quite look normal, but we put like a fake half a sill that's in front of the window, and then this trim is carefully made. It's a nice thick piece of trim to completely hide the window. So these sashes look like they're just going up and down behind a piece of trim like an old window would, and there's no storm window. That's what I love. So the very back of our house actually looks better than the front of the house. But so this is where we went super deep. You can see all the insulation. Look at that mess. This is in the second floor L bathroom. Just a huge mess. But we got it all back together, and if you see that bathroom now, it's pretty amazing. We call it the spa. It's for mom-in-law. She's out in California now, but we did that all up for her. But this is just before the insulation went in, and then the insulation guys came and did that. This is the garage that we looked at from the outside. Here's the drywall ready to go back, and the triple glass windows, various places. So this is, our good R24 of insulation in there, and completely air barriers. It's wonderful. That apartment is so comfortable, and it's super quiet too, because there's, the triple glass windows and the insulation makes it really nice. Not that you need to be quiet facing Wire Hill. There's not really all the noise back there. Maybe an airplane on this approach to the airfield. So historic window restoration. So we talked about the modern windows. Now moving up to the front of the house, that ring is a little bit annoying. So I couldn't find many pictures. I usually keep pictures of destroyed windows. So I searched far and wide, and I found this one. That's an actual picture. You could probably tell by the reflection somehow, but that is one of our windows, and this is what it looks like when we came to the house. And for many years, we didn't change them all at once. We did groups of them, 4 at a time, like a room. So completely destroyed. If you would push on that muntin, it would move, though. Like you could push it half an inch out, and if you leaned on it, you just fall through, and then you'd be against the storm window. So we always tell the kids to be gentle and whatever until we repair them. Then in comes Wonder Woman. I call her Wonder Woman. Her real name is Window Woman. So she's out of, I think, Ipswich. She has open houses a couple times a year. You can go and see her operation. She has like 12 people. They do wonderful jobs. So they take a horrible window like that and they turn it into that or this. So these are the huge windows. That's a jade plant there, the sunset facing the street. So right next to Stan's brand new sign, the 1818 Loring House sign, which is right here next to that window. But just look at how that comes out, and then sitting pretty, all women here except Steve, I'll point out. So sitting pretty painting. She also did all the painting, painted this whole theater, every square inch of this building. But I met her as a cabinet painter at Pridecraft. They referred me to her. They come in and they'll do very fine cabinet finishing on your cabinets to redo them. Very fine stuff. They don't paint houses, they don't paint interiors, they don't paint doors, But I brought them this project, and they said, "Well, we don't really do that." And I guess I said I want it really fine. I want like a white glove feel, really nice quality stuff. And they said, "Well, that's what we do." And I guess we can do that. She ended up doing every Indian shutter in the whole house, and every door. We took every door off, sent it down to Boston. They stripped off 17 layers of lead paint, and then it came back. They had to dry for a month, and then she actually spray painted the doors. And then hand painted the final finish. She spray painted primers on everything in the barn. She had a spray booth set up in her barn. It was really cool. And she did all this, figured it all out. It was wonderful to work with. Kathy McCormick is her name. But the final look of it is just so nice. And I mean, that door, bring it up to that beauty from what it was. Still have a couple doors that are painted blue. They were all like this light blue, very faded. So we went with the red. This has been more a color called Heritage Red. So it makes some sense. So anyway, all the windows were restored in the whole main house, except 4 windows at the bottom on the north side, again, the cheap side. And that's because no one maintained them. They fell apart so badly that we talked to a window woman about it. They said, we can bring those back. We're going to have to pretty much replace all the muntins and remake them, and we'll use your old glass. And it was going to cost like twice as much. So then I asked in historic New England, can we put brand new mahogany windows in, protected by storm panels? And they went back and forth a few times, but then they said yes. So there's actually 4 sets of windows facing the north that are really new, copied exactly to all the molding standards. Made by, I forget what company they were, but they were out of Boston, and they I think do historic replacement windows for like the buildings in Boston and stuff, the historic like Old North Church and stuff. So they did that, and they came out really nicely too. So, and we have two sets of windows. I say we, but just 2 windows in the house are still to be done. Those are 2 that are also facing the street that have to be done. But anyway, so very different. Again, we put new storms on most of the main house by Harvey. So those are the really nice heavy ones to protect these windows. So what we added and what we improved, so I put this in 3 different colors. These are kind of the fabric and house replacement stuff, and then the green efficiency stuff, and then kind of the fun stuff. So we did insulation work, we improved the windows, door seals, things like that, adding storm doors where they were falling apart, dug out the basements, got the water under control, that end of it, and then replaced rotted posts, sheathing, all kinds of stuff. I could be here all day going over all the things we did to shore up all the wood parts around the house. And then we always had solar. We had solar in our first house because I've been the Pied Piper of these things since I was like 12 and a half years old. So, of course, we had solar from the beginning, but we added more. When there were subsidies, we added even more. Sorry. Geothermal was the really exciting part. Unlike the air source heat pumps that, getting a lot of, attention today, and they're great, they get you off of gas for similar to maybe a little bit of savings over a natural gas system, definitely savings over oil or propane for sure, but geothermal gets you 2 times better than that. And the magic, it sounds like magic, 500% efficient. So literally, the main unit in our house uses 2,000 watts of electricity and makes 10,000 watts of heat when it's running. So that sounds like magic, and well, it almost is, but it is not really. It just takes the 50-degree water out of the ground and it steals heat out of it, putting it back at 44 degrees. And that heat that it's stolen, it takes and it runs through a compressor and adds it to the house air. So it takes the house air, comes in at maybe 68 and goes out at 75. So it's just taking that energy from here and sticking it over here. It works the same as your fridge or an air conditioner. A fridge puts heat out the back to make the food cold. It's actually, what it's really doing is it's stealing heat from inside the fridge and then moving it to outside the fridge at different temperatures. It's a little bit weird. I'm a mechanical engineer. I'm supposed to understand thermodynamics and fluid mechanics, but it's still weird to me. We're trying to make more exhibits here. Joanna and I and others, with some panels that color box exhibit designers have worked on that'll hopefully explain that a little better and some more videos. But eventually, because we want people to understand this so it doesn't seem like magic, but it really is like magic because 500% efficiency is pretty nice. I love it. So this lets you run at half the energy of an air source heat pump. Then your solar can do twice as much, and you're limited by Mass state law or whoever's law of the utility for 10 kilowatts AC. That's all you can put on your house. So you might have electric vehicles coming. You have more and more electric house. Gas dryers are going to go away. Gas heating appliances, cooking, hot water. So if everything's electric, the biggest energy sucker is your heat. To me, it's really nice to get the most efficient system. Now, these are expensive upfront costs, but it gives you heat, gives you air conditioning at by far the best efficiency, about 2 times an air source heat pump. Again, they're probably about double the money. So you're paying for it upfront, then you save in the long term. That was an easy decision to me, but it took a lot of thought back in 2008 to convince myself that this made sense. And no one was doing it then. Now a few more people are doing it. And you're sitting in a building right now that has it all the time, all year. Then various hot water heaters of all different types, all electrically powered. I finally took the gas out of the house last year. People wondered, why do you have gas? Well, we still have one gas cooktop. And then I realized I'm never using it. So we have an induction cooktop. So why would we use gas? So after it sat for 3 months not being used, and I realized we're paying like $20 just to be connected to the gas utility. Why don't we just get rid of that? So I cut it off, and now there's a gas cooktop with an electric oven under it that just doesn't work. But then we have another kitchen with an induction, and one day when I have a significant other that's actually cooking in the kitchen all the time, they say, we need to get a range here that actually works fully. Then we'll get a range there with another induction cooktop. So again, and the induction cooktop. 2 electric dryers, electric washers, obviously. Anyway, then the fun stuff, Anita made all these amazing things outside, and I made vegetable gardens, paths, patios, and yes, a train, huh? There is a train. So PV to power everything, kind of a fun picture of the Kittredge farm in the background. They get to look at all of our ugly solar, sorry about that. And a really fun quote, another quote from Thomas Edison from even earlier, I think that's 1908. So it's like 116 years ago. And he said, quite possibly one day the sun will, build to power useful things. And well, here you go. That's this ugly set of historic arrays. And no, it doesn't have to look that ugly. It can be one thing now that does it all, obviously. But that right there is Jimmy Carter era. I'm very proud of that. That's a 1975 solar panel with round cells. It's about 9% efficient. These are about 22% efficient. And these cost $100 a watt. These cost 30 cents a watt. So that's like a crazy, crazy ratio just in that time. Huh? Essentially, yeah, it was the same era. I heard the White House, those ones were hot water. I'm not sure, but yeah, same era, mid-70s. So Solar Power Corp, a Woburn, Mass. company, believe it or not. So solar power runs every one of those things. So HVAC, as I say, a journey through time. So we talked about, the coal-fired steam that then went to oil, then went to natural gas. Enter us. We went to geothermal hot air powered by solar, and then invest the geothermal in our brand new basement slab. And if you look very carefully in the background, it's hard to see, but this little thing here, that's a knee wall that's underneath the original foundation. That's the extra foot of head clearance, so we'd go from 6 feet to 7 feet. When we first went in our basement, the lighting was horrible. It was all dark and dingy, and there were cobwebs and little water trickling here and there. And there were steam pipes, return pipes that were running across the floor, sitting on bricks and blocks of wood, maybe 4 to 6 inches off the floor. They were pitched here and there, and there were pipes down like a foot below the ceiling, which is 6 feet high. So you'd walk along, you bump your head on a pipe, and then you'd trip on this thing on the floor. It was just a total, and they're all over the place. It was a total nightmare. So when we did the basement, we moved everything. We just chopped everything out and just did it. Again, this is while we're running a house with kids and, mom-in-law's like, why doesn't the water work? Oh, it's Mom, it's not going to work for a week. You have to use the other kitchen, So it's good to have two kitchens. But wood, people laugh at the disease I have, me and Peter Boynton with our wood. So all this wood falls on the property. I don't ever buy wood. I've never trucked in wood. I don't use one drop of oil, gas, diesel to make this wood. This wood is just from the trees. The things fall down. If we trim a tree, I just chop it up and stack it. And these two, you can see the kids there having lots of fun in the basement. That's right to the left of this. This is in the kitchen, kind of stuck into the hearth. It's a really little, it's Jodel's from Sweden, smallest stove, because we needed to meet clearance heights to fit sort of in the hearth. I didn't want it way out in the room. So you had like a 40-inch height limit to fit that. Only the small stove works. This is a larger stove, even though it looks small in the basement, so we can heat up the basement with wood. So I don't need to use any of these, but everyone knows the comfort and fun of a nice wood fire, the heat on you. Because the geothermal heat, just makes the house 70 degrees all the time, but it's not, you don't have that when you come in cold and frostbitten. You want to go up to a hot fire with hot chocolate and warm up. So it's always nice to have that. And the wood's, that wood's renewable. We're not, there's even the chainsaw solar powered, everything's solar powered. I have a log splitter. I don't do it the old fashioned way. I have an electric log splitter, hydraulic log splitter, but that's also solar powered. So, and where did we get with all this? So this kind of says it all. This is the last bill from this May, and it's always zero. It's really fun to rip that envelope open and see the zero every time. So this energy that got used, it doesn't show the negative energy, but as Joanna knows well, in this building, for example, there's negative energy when you're creating energy, saving it into the grid. That doesn't show here. There should be green bars going down all the other months. These months, we're using energy net for that month out of the utility grid. So that December, January, and February of this year, we were using energy, but then there's so much negative energy that the bill is there's up above in the bill, it shows the negative number, but the key thing is what you owe is always zero. So you bank a little more in the spring, summer, fall, and then you use a little bit, or you use quite a bit in the winter, but it should balance if you do it right. So there's no heating costs, no cooling costs, no electricity costs, no fossil fuel on the property for anything, even cars. Solar powers the heating, the cooling, the clothes washing and drying, and the electric vehicles. So there's no gasoline, even no gas vehicles, of course. And we have the whole thing beyond net zero. So having just watched one of the Worden movies, I thought of energy supremacy. So that's where we have to be at. This building has that name too. So, and unfortunately, we do have death and taxes, and yes, I know those both well. And besides town water, those are the only costs we have. Obviously, real estate tax is there, and then just a couple minutes on the fun factor before we get to questions. So, I call that the inner beauty. These are just a couple pictures of that I threw on, but the last kitchen we did, it's kind of like a bar, and Mom had an art desk to the right of it. This is facing north, but it's very well lit. All the cabinets in our house were made by Pridecraft. I love their work. It's all real wood and really well done. They also did the granite for this. There's the induction cooktop with a little wall oven. This is just a sunset facing the street, facing each way. This is facing that way, and this is facing the other way. The picture was taken at literally in the same few minutes. So the staircase, everything completely restored, inside and out, like painstakingly. Steve took apart every one of these balusters and lifted it up and worked all the stairs. You can still see the beat marks, but those don't show up normally. It's because the sun's shining at them. But just getting those all clean, and we take our shoes off in the house, so things like that never get dirty again. They won't get all worn and dirty. So I learned that from the Indian side of the house. And then there's John and Paul DeSalvo down there together with Steve. And then patios and beyond, we weren't allowed to build stuff three-dimensional really, but we tried to work with the landscape by making a lot of flat patios everywhere. Obviously, there's this little grape arbor thing. But Here's the one out the side door, a little curve. And all these bricks, most of the bricks, were from the basement. The basement was dirt and brick. And some got broken, but most didn't. And we reused those bricks to make many of the paths and patios. We like this brick trim with brick and granite. I love the combination of brick and granite. So we did, all these different patios have different combinations of brick and granite together to kind of, the house is brick and granite. The walls are supposed to be brick, but we painted them white. Well, they came white, and when I asked Anita one day, hey, should we strip them and have the red with the granite and the white? She said, nah, the white's nice. So we kept the white. And I guess we'll keep them white forever. So Anita's flower garden is just breathtaking. So she worked on these for years and had some help from Chris Gray. Of course, another women-owned business. What's it called again? Lasting Impressions, yes. So they did all the plantings and worked with Anita to figure out what kind of plantings, all perennial. We wish she was perennial too, but all the plants are perennial, so there's nothing to plant. They grow every year. The different flowers are coming all through the year. It's really, really well done. And if you're ever up, please, come in and take a look at it. It's pretty breathtaking right now, at least before everything dries out. And then, working with the landscape, so kind of taking a bigger view, different seasons, how is it going to look? We kind of planned a lot of these things over a long time. We do have our ugly solar panels, but I love pictures of solar panels with nature because they keep nature. So this is the sun rising over Wire Hill, and this is the same probably earlier in a different day. That's the sun rising. These are all sunrise pictures. And then the winter scenes, of course, are crazy with the barn and the house. So, and then the train. Yes, there's a train. So that picture in our collection here at the Society, I just love that picture. And, can you tell which is older? This is the 84 Academy Road trolley. And it's styled loosely after this type of a design. Couldn't quite get everything to be exactly like that. But this is really running down Water Street or something. I think it says somewhere there. But that's literally a historic trolley in town, so I like connecting that history together and kind of recreating that on our property. And there it is. There's the car in color instead of black and white. So it runs in total about a third of a mile, all the way around circuitously through the property, and was a lot of fun. And built it in 1999, just before my first daughter Maya came, because I remembered my dad built a dollhouse for my sister. It was done when she was 16. And I'm like, I'm not going to be that dad. So my nesting instinct, I was out in the barn with a little propane heater cutting wood. Most people would be painting a nursery or something like that. Nope, I was building a trolley. So, and then, then came the underground. So Spanini doesn't care what we do underneath the ground. Neither does Historic New England. So we went high-tech, modern. It's a cut and cover subway system. It's 100 feet. Here's the rebar. It's all to code. It's stamped, certified drawings done by my cousin in Vermont. We had to have Mass State certified stamped drawings to get a permit. The town wondered what we were doing. We didn't tell them. But I wondered what people thought from space seeing this when it was black, covered with the rubber under, the coating. Must have looked pretty strange from up there. But there's the tunnel just finished, just when we peeled off the plywood. It's very narrow. It's 4 feet wide, 6 feet tall. And because I'm 5 feet 9.5, so I don't need it any taller than that. And yes, we had to build a new car because the old one wasn't going to fit down there. So I said to Anita, we're going to have to build a new trolley. She said, well, I guess we'll have to build a new trolley. It's like, okay. So that was my 2014 project. And there's the kids, Priya and her best friend Sienna, first run on a truck, a prototype truck for the trolley. 2 of them sitting on the truck screaming down the hill, because this thing is actually downhill from the barn. The barn's about 2 feet higher than the house. You wouldn't know that, but if you look, the driveway's kind of going up. Probably there just to be cheap. They dug down less and they put the house up, kind of the way they build modern houses. They dig down a little and then they get the foundations way out of the ground. It's just easier. And you don't want your basement way down in the ground because it's just going to get wet because they don't seal it right. So anyway, they would just jump on it, go screaming down here, and they're probably about in the middle there coming into the house. And yes, there's like literally an Oriental rug under the train track. Like, huh? So you walk in our basement, there's a train car sitting there, so it is a bit strange. So it connects to new buildings. And then it goes out and connects into the main line. So you can take the red line to the green line, so we say. Then catch a ball game, So anyway, and then what am I doing now? Well, something else. Got to be different. So this is a historic picture, again, from our collection. This is on Lake Cochituate. This is a steam-powered boat. Not always the safest boats. If that pressure got too high, that thing could blow up and kill a lot of people, and that did happen on some pretty big steamers, like riverboat steamers and things. But those people look happy. They don't look like they're worried about that thing, that hot thing back there. But look at how different that looks. So this is the same kind of idea. A bunch of people in a boat, but instead of being powered by coal or wood, it's powered directly by the sun. There are batteries in there too. And this is a ferry boat design that we're working on, hopefully to go with MIVA eventually, to go with their buses. That's their color scheme you may recognize. So lots of fun. So just sustainability to another application. I'm kind of just a broken record. Just keep doing different and more of the same. So I would question, what the heck would Bailey Loring think if he pulled up in his horse or walking or his carriage to this, like all these LEDs and lights and this granite, and I'd be like, what is going on here? It's the future of my old house. So anyway, whatever questions you want. Hopefully I didn't bore us all too badly. Oh.
You said earlier how very specific they were about preserving the landscape for like Mass Historic or Historic New England or trustees of reservation, one of the groups. How did you get them to agree to a train?
Well, the train sits on the ground. We literally didn't shave
Oh,
off.
so it was like that 1 foot deal you spoke earlier about nothing could go up about a foot.
There might have been places we had to add 3 inches of soil or take away, shave a little off, but nothing. The land is really pretty flat. And pretty much that train track is pressure treated 2x4s with rails, and it just sits on the grass. And then the train, whereas it goes over it kind of evens it out over time. It should have ballast, gravel and all that, but I wasn't going to do that. The subway, of course, we did have to dig down, but we put everything back how it was, literally to the inch. I mean, we never measured it.
But they didn't object to this cart going around, that the train going around your house.
No,
because it wasn't permanent.
Yeah, because it's kind of like driving a car there. There's just a track sitting there, and it's temporary. I mean, if the next owner doesn't like it, they can take it out. It's just sitting there. Yeah. It's not.
I know a lot of 19th century buildings, like in the back, they cheap out on the bricks. Maybe it's on glazed brick and this and that. But I'm surprised that a house of this stature, that they would do that.
Yeah.
But the density of the walls in the front are like 2.5 feet or 3 feet, and then the back wall is like.
It's really, it
like
was barely 3 inches. I mean, it was the old dimensional 2x3 that was 2x3, and so we added another inch so we could get it to 4, just for insulation.
Yeah, and just one last question: from the original owner until the Stevens bought it in 1950, how many owners did this house have?
I don't think many, but I'm not sure. I bet maybe in our archives there's the Good Inland Town book has some information. I didn't dig around in that, but. I wonder if there is more. I guess the Registry of Deeds might have something, or Registry of Deeds. So I suppose you'd look that up. I know one thing the Historical Society will do for people is research on their homes and things. But I know we've all the books written on it. I assume it's all there.
Yeah.
But I know many people lived in it. There's so many. Dozens of people have come up off the street and say, I used to live here. And we know a few names, but it was many renters, and then it was like a rooming house at one point, because every one of the 8 rooms on the main house has a key lock. It's really weird. And some of them have a key lock on one door, and the other one has a turn thing from the inside. Yeah. So you could tell which side someone was trying to protect. And then only one room, this room right here, is the only room that has no locks, and actually one door is not even there. So that must have been like a common living room, and then the kitchen, of course, didn't have locks, but every other room had, even these first floor rooms had locks on the doors. We took all those out when we restored the doors. we took all them out, made them all back to original.
Well, you were lucky with so many owners that there weren't any really drastic changes to the building.
Very lucky. I mean, you basically had nature doing this thing. Look at that angle of that window. This window is like a trapezoid. And when we put new windows in, it was literally, making that was crazy. But that's the worst one. You can see them going up and down. That's a good picture to see how topsy-turvy things were. Mm-hmm. And of course, all the rooms are slanted and angled. Not quite as bad as maybe some of the first period houses, but pretty bad. Furniture's always fun to. You need 3 or 4 different heights of things, and you have to keep playing with it. And you can't just make it level. You have to balance it between how it looks and level, because pictures are the worst things. Depending on how you're looking at it, it never looks quite right. Yeah. But that's, if you don't like that, you have to get a modern house, or at least Victorian house that everything was square and more stout.
Thanks.
So, Mr. Stan.
So, James, I'll ask you my perennial question.
Perennial.
So, what about batteries?
Batteries, yes, you've asked that before.
Let's get rid of those 3 bars, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, get rid of those 3
Yeah,
bars.
instead of using utilities as a battery. So, the easy answer to that is the net zero law lets all of us, for free, use the utility as a 1-for-1, give a penny, take a penny battery. The utility is our battery. It doesn't make any sense because I'm getting that battery for free. I don't pay a dime to the utility. So I get to use that battery when I'm at night, I'm using the utility. In the day, I'm putting into the utility. But the way the net metering law worked is they said, you're providing the green benefit and putting all those green electrons is coming out of our line, going right over to Kathy. She's taking some of them, going down to the kitchen. Oh no, they have solar. Skips past them, goes to the McLaren's house. They don't have solar yet, right? Right, you guys? Yeah. So, as far as those last electrons will get, then they're used up. And then in the nighttime and in the winter months, we're using all that. So when net metering ends, it's not going to last forever. Eventually, when more and more houses become solar, now residential 30% tax credit is officially going to be gone forever at the end of this year, done. The new administration is killing it. So that's it. No more democratization of solar power for everyone. It'll all be a utility game now. So utilities will own solar just like they always own power forever. It's a little sad. You can still buy solar, you just don't get a tax credit. So that being said, when net metering dies, batteries are going to make sense. And the first battery that's probably going to make sense to use is your car, because it's a rolling battery, and you already paid for it. And what is it doing when you're home? You're sitting there. You're not there. You're there, and your car's there. So, but there's times when the car won't be charged, or you need to charge the car, or you're not at the house still needs to run. So who knows how all this is going to work, but basically when net metering gets killed in the future, maybe 5 years, 10 years, I don't know when it'll get killed, then we'll have to be paying more for that power we're taking out than what would, if we're a utility generator, we should be getting the wholesale rate. I'm saying this, I don't want this for all of us solar people out there. We should be getting the same rate that any generator gets. Any wind turbine, any nuclear generator or whatever. Maybe green should get more value than coal or oil, but you still should be getting a wholesale rate, and then you should be buying it at the retail rate. So you're paying for the infrastructure, because I don't pay for the infrastructure. That's not really fair. So yes, when that comes and when that rate difference, what is that called? Not aggregation. When things are different. Whatever that term is, it begins with A, but arbitrage, yeah. So when that arbitrage someone's in finance here, gets too big, then the pain will get high enough that people will start putting batteries in. Now people are putting batteries in because you also get backup power. Instead of putting that nasty natural gas generator or a Honda generator for a blackout, you can use your battery. But that's the only value you get, and that's kind of just a luxury unless you have medical equipment or something. It's just a luxury. It's kind of like granite countertops. You can survive for 2 days with, as long as you can keep your fridge cold. But yeah, so we'll all see. It's a very good question. When is that going to matter? It does matter in California where there's time of use metering. So where they charge a lot more when air conditioning is heavy and the utility is straining, they charge way more for power, and then they charge very little at night. So people are already using that arbitrage to make money with when they charge their EV and how they use their house battery. There's these wall-hung batteries that will arbitrage the power automatically for you and just make you money. But me standing here, being an environmentalist, caring about sustainability, I hate the idea of mined chemical batteries being used to sit in stationary applications, because these lithium batteries are wonderfully light and energy dense, and they should be used for transportation. But then how are we going to power these stationary things? I don't know. Someone needs to figure that out. Some electrochemical engineers and whatever have to keep working on that.
You said something about halfway through about there's a limitation about 10 kilowatts?
10 kilowatt AC. So
What
like,
does that mean?
you're allowed to have your electronics, your inverter or inverters if they're on the roof, can put 10 kilowatts into the utility grid or into your building at any time, but not more. You can have any amount of DC, so you can oversize the DC. And that's, for example, here we're allowed to have 25 kilowatts in this commercial level facility. We have 23.4 right now, so we can put 1.6 more. But you can also increase the DC size more, so you kind of flat line at 10 kilowatts for many hours of the day instead of doing this. The sun rises, goes through noon and sets. Most people's solar is like that, but if you oversize it, it starts to flat top out, and you get more and more, you kind of bring the corners up, you get all that extra energy. Because the solar panels are very cheap, so why not oversize them? So that 10 kilowatt limit isn't really a limit, it's just the AC output limit. Into the grid or into your house. Because whether it goes in your house or in the grid, no one knows, right? It's wherever the power is needed. Great question, Stan, as always.
How much total did you put in this renovation?
Money?
In terms of money. Well, in terms
geez.
of labor and materials, and then the second figure of adding your personal rent.
I should, one day it'd be interesting to actually try to add that up. I suppose I should have that number. I mean, I know what individual systems cost, like the geothermal system way back when, with 40 grand, it would be a lot more now, probably 80 or something. But the renovation of the house, the fabric of the house, oh my God, it's at least what we spent buying the house. So I'm just going to guess like $400,000 again, basically to put the house back together again and make it better all along the way. I'm just making that up. I think I don't think that'd be off by more than 100 grand. So that means we have about 800,000 into the house, total between buying it and renovations. But yeah.
But it's 6 generations, right?
6 generations guarantee. So after I'm dead and my kids are dead and their kids are dead, they'll still be there. I'll just keep it painted, right? That's it. Steve just says it, just keep it painted. If the paint starts to chip, it's time to strip it and do it right, use the right paints, paint it again, and then it'll just last. And that's what didn't happen in these old houses. It's really the paint filling, because once the paint fills, then something rots. And then when it rots, the little water gets further in, and it unravels. But again, a lot of the original materials, those windowsills, many of the clapboards, a lot of the corner, all those original wood. We know what's original. Steve knows once he takes it off, he knows what's original. Of course, once he's taken it off, he's pretty much not putting it back. But he tests stuff, and he knows if we're going to restore it and use it, or just take it off and replace it. But yeah, so that's a really good question. I really should have that number to be a nice number to put up in something like this, and it's kind of important if you're thinking, well, is it worth it? But I just know that it's really nice now every single month having no heating bill and no electric bill at all, zero. And there's no maintenance now. Again, Anita, she'll be enjoying, we did all this, now we get to enjoy it. I just enjoying it alone. But yeah, it's like doing it right so you don't have to do more maintenance later. Like when I first went around, Anita and I doing stuff, all the stuff we did got redone by Steve because it wasn't done right, it wasn't good enough materials. I went to Home Depot, bought pine wood and primed it and painted it, whatever, and it rotted out 5 years later because it's junk. So Steve taught me, select woods in I don't know what town they're in, somewhere near Ipswich or Amesbury or whatever, Amesbury Industrial Supply. He just he knows all these old time guys that know where the right stuff to get, right wood and all that stuff is. Here in this building, we got to have much more fun. We got clearance from old Center Store District, and we used AZEK. Every single piece of trim facing the weather here is AZEK and vinyl windows, and then the rest of the whole building is brick. 96% of the building is brick, so in good shape. So there is very little fabric to the weather. That's one of the neat things about this house. There's some brick, but there's an awful lot of wood. And the barn, barns are a nightmare of wood that is just sitting there. And what do you put in a barn? A bunch of junk, nothing. Brad has nice parties in his barn. He keeps it nice and empty, which is wonderful. But they don't really no one's living in them. There's no real purpose for them. So it's tough. If you don't maintain it and you're not living in it, it can easily just fall down. And you see that happen here and there around many towns, right? So.
It'd be interesting if you could sort of cost out the components, like insulation,
Yeah.
geothermal,
Maybe that'll have to be a deep dive project to the future. I could literally.
sort of a Chinese menu for people, so they can say,
Yeah.
maybe,
Yeah. Because how do you start? What do you do? I just kind of outlined kind of what we did about stabilization and then living in the house a while and planning a project. Like, look at that bulkhead there. There's nothing to do with energy efficiency or history or anything. That's an all-cedar bulkhead that Steve built 2010. It's going to be there for 100 years. He told me you don't even have to stain it because it's all cedar. I said, I'm staining it because I want to even protect the cedar. So, he put that in 15 years ago and it still looks brand new. Brand new. And it's, he put a little poured concrete right into the stones that were there, and it's really nice. If you ever walk up the driveway, just look at that. And it's weathered a little, but it's going to last forever. But that's nothing to do with energy efficiency or the house is just doing something really. It was rotted plywood. It was gross when we came.
Well, it's the word you haven't used much is preservation, right? A lot of these are preservation kind of.
Yeah.
A lot of these are kind of preservation approaches to
Yeah.
the way you've
Bring
done
it
the
back.
renovations, right?
Yeah.
Really for the long haul. And it's sort of keeping with the fact that amazingly complete 200-year-old building.
Yeah.
It's lasted that long already, so you kind of have a...
Plus 6 generations, which is another
Yeah.
200 years or
Yeah,
so.
yeah. So you have a good legacy to, follow on to, right?
Yeah.
So-
We hope we gave that to this property. And again, we thank the Stevens family and Bob for finding us and transferring it over to us to take it on this leg of its journey.
Yeah. So now the next step is to have a open house and give us all a
Yeah,
tour of
yeah,
everything,
there you
right?
go, yeah.
Let us ride on the trolley. and-
Definitely.
Two questions, James.
Yeah.
The first one is, we live in a neighborhood on the west side of town, and the houses are close together. When I was renovating the house, I had somebody come in for geothermal to ask them, because I knew that it was highly efficient. And they were explaining that it would be costly for one house to do it. I know that there was a Massachusetts program for a neighborhood
District, yeah.
project to do that. What do you think about the prospects for that in North Andover? And then the second question was just boot scraper. Did you put the boot scraper up there, or has that always been?
No, that was always there.
That's
I
fine.
think there were 2, but one of them bit the dust at some point. But yeah, that's I think original. But yeah, great question. Boot scraper got me confused. Oh yeah, district. So district, they're doing that pilot project, Central Mass somewhere. We see how that goes. But I've even suggested that for potentially the area of like the church here and the Johnson Cottage and there's different things you could do. It really helps that are close together. But the idea is great. We live only person close to us is Kathy. You can't see her behind here, the hedges, but she's the closest, but she's across the street. But the other houses are more than 1,000 feet away, so it just wouldn't make any sense. Our well is right there, right next to the mailbox. It's 700 feet straight down, and it goes 10 feet to the foundation. This house consumes a lot of energy. That well runs the geothermal. There's a 4-ton unit to heat the main house and a 2-ton unit to heat the L of the house. But yes, district geothermal, then the drill rig can set up and punch a whole bunch of wells in one area, and then they just plumb them to, make the loop, get to all the houses. It could economically make a ton of sense, especially like if you get access to, if there were backyards backing up to each other on like 2 streets and you could just go right down like a spine. It's kind of like the new natural gas infrastructure. They've even talked about the natural gas industry just simply pivoting from pipes, instead of carrying gas with a little bit of water in there, because there always was water in there, they can just carry water. And the guys know how to put pipe in and put pipe through steel pipes, and it's all plastic now. So the natural gas industry could just reinvent itself to supply geothermal heat and cold water to people's houses for that purpose. You just have to add the drill rig part of it. But some of these gas mains going down the street are big, so that could be the main. So that's the 50-degree water's running down, then just tees off to each house.
We're only 5,000 square feet. Each one
Yeah.
is 5,000 square feet.
Oh, wow.
There's 90 houses, 90 to 100 houses in our area, all of
Yeah.
that. So it seems like it would make a lot of economic sense.
It definitely would.
Usually, we're not going to be doing that individually.
Yeah.
It's just too much.
Well, the question becomes, does someone figure out that network part, or do we cost reduce the individual part? I personally think for closed houses like that and cities too, the network makes a ton of sense. It should, and it all kind of melds together, like one house is using a little more, one house is using less. You have to decide if you charge people differently for the throughput of water at what temperature, or whether it's just you're just on the system, or every house just has to meet a certain installation and efficiency standard. That's one of the most important things, is to get, this house is not that efficient. This building is very efficient. The solar in this building is only twice as much as we have on that house. So this building, 15,000 square feet, that building's about 5. This building is, like 2 times more efficient, than this house. So I'm not going to say this house is that efficient, but a modern house can be super efficient, and even a renovated middle-aged house, you take off the drywall on the inside, you take out the fiberglass, and you put in spray foam, and you triple the efficiency of the house. And you know that you've tripled it because you don't know what's in there right now. You don't know if the fiberglass is settled, how good it is, how many mice have run through it, how good the job was done in the first place. So yeah, I think it remains to be seen, because we were very early adopter with solar and then with geothermal. No one had geothermal in 2008 when we put it in, but it's still expensive. So yes, it needs, the big issue is the well. The piece of equipment in the house is not really that different than a heat pump. It sits in your basement. It's in a perfect environment. The thing with these outside heat pumps, they're outside. They have leaves and snow and ice and temperature extremes. Mine, the picture I took there, I took that picture 3 days ago when Joanna told me to write this presentation. I went down and I snapped the picture. I mean, that thing's been there since 2008, and it's stainless steel. It just sits there. And our basement's dry. So there's nothing outside. There's not one hole other than a bathroom vent or a dryer vent. There's nothing going outside. So that's kind of neat. It's very long term. So again, I love the district idea. I don't know if I was in another mindset, I'd probably want to do that district geo as a company and just go all at it, because it shouldn't be that hard to do. You could definitely get the cost probably per house to at least half than doing every house individually. So, good question. Someone else had one.
I live in a house that was built in 1830 near the railroad station in Andover, and the construction is fascinating. It's a 2-story structure with a full basement.
Oh.
And the beam that's above the second floor and supporting the roof is a 14-inch diameter tree.
Wow.
That's sawn on the 2 verticals. The top and bottom are left unsawn.
Wow,
The bark is
Still there. Wow. That's awesome. Wow. Cool. We had some trees of various shapes and sizes holding up the house, but also the barn, and Steve did away with all that, fixing all the big members, and replacing some things. A couple of the posts in the barn basement were granite, and some of them were kind of wonky. They kind of did some, I don't know, they were hand carved, but they hold up. And we left those because they were in great shape. But
Right, do we have any more questions? These are great questions.
yeah, all been good questions and good additions and
I think we're
thoughts.
good. Oh, Mark's got a question. Hold on.
I don't know if this is the last question, but what's next? Is there
Well-
anything else that you want to do? It seems like you've done everything, so I just figured I'd ask.
Well, I hope Stan and Joanna don't suck me into the Schofield Mill, but no, I mean, I'm working on the boats, really loving that. I'm hoping all of us will be riding on a ferry, catching at the tap, grab a beer, go down to Amesbury, go down to Newburyport, go over to Salisbury. I mean, this could all happen literally in the next 3 years, I'm hoping. That's kind of a basis of what I'm passionate about is solar boats, especially for commercial use for mini ferries or water taxis. I can see the red caps in Boston, the ones that go over to Logan and around the Boston piers. I could see those being these solar boats. So that's where I'm getting a skip in my step and trying to wake up every morning. You know, even with missing Anita, it's very hard, but that gives me something exciting to look forward to. And then we hope to make pleasure versions of those boats. Also, you can use, because the boat's a floating power system that generates its own energy, you can use it to power stuff on the shore. Like if you go to an island or you help another boat or you're moored up with another boat, you can throw them a line, an electrical line, and just don't let it go in the water. You know, so a lot of interesting ideas. And we're thinking also, this is the first boat that'll actually, people always think of the boat as a money pit. And this would be the first boat that can pay you back, because literally you're going to be putting energy back into the utility grid or into other boats. So anyway, that's my silly thing to be doing now.
How about electric swan boats on Lake Kachikawick?
Oh, fun!
Huh?
Just yeah, like
Oh,
that
we could have
steam
little
one.
tours, right?
That's fun,
Oh,
yeah,
we
and
could,
pure electric,
tour
so
around the
keep the water
lake.
department happy.
Yeah, because that's, you can have
Yeah.
electric boats.
If
you know?
Peter Boynton will help us get the solar
The-
boat in the water, we
the
could have
approval,
a
right?
North Andover Historical Society of
Wouldn't-
soiree on the water. That'd be
Wouldn't that be fun? Boy, it would be the...
kind of launch out of what's the place there? The church run club. What's it called? Rolling Ridge. We could launch out of there. You on the garden, and then you could wear our old 1900 clothes and go get on the steamboat and yeah.
All right, let's make a plan.
Yeah.
All right, do we have any more questions? I want to
All great
thank
questions.
James Worden. Thank you
Absolutely.
so much. What a great presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Joanna. Thank you. Yeah, when Joanna asked me to do this, it was like, how could I ever be anything other than say, I mean, I've sort of done this years ago, but, it's all done now, so it's kind of nice to actually tell people about it. Yeah. So, thanks a lot.
Now you need the road presentation for this building so you can go to nonprofits.
Yeah. Well, we eventually have to do a presentation in this building to bring everything together, but maybe next year we'll do that one.
Next year,
Yeah.
Along with the,
Bring it up.
along with
to
the
date.
open house, train ride, and
Yeah.
lake jaunt,
Lake
soiree.
Yeah, Lake Kachikawick.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming.